Hey, joining us right now. Are you in California?
I am in California, yes.
Wow, joining us all the way from the West Coast. I don't know why I'm saying that. Chris Gore, welcome back to Radio Labyrinth. Jeff and I are happy to have you. Great, how are you?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for calling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to talking to you about this project you got going on.
Well, let's dive right in.
Now, we had talked about this a couple years ago when we ran into you at Dragon Con, and we had a fun show. You were talking back then about Attack of the Dock, and now it sounds like it's ready to go.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was actually working on a different documentary before, a documentary about Film Threat called Film Threat Sucks. And while I was archiving material for that, I kept running across material, from Attack of the Show. Photos and media and videos. I mean, I'm talking about like videos shot on like a Moto Q. I don't even know if you remember that phone. And it struck me that like, oh, this is really interesting. I'm just going to put this in a separate folder, whatever. And I had so much stuff, and I kind of learned a lot about the archiving process for a documentary that I got interested. Well, like maybe there's something here, and it was really amazing to kind of see like views of the show that people had never seen before, because while I was on the show doing DVD Tuesday on Tuesdays and then would occasionally guest host and do little movie segments, I was also a fan of the show. So I would watch all of the show except for myself. So I was sort of had one foot in it and one foot on the other side being on the show. But I also, because, my duties on the show were relatively light compared to the main host, Kevin Olivia, I had the opportunity to take pictures and video. And I mean, I just did it for my own personal, fun, just to have it. And then I realized I wasn't the only one doing it. There were a lot of other people that worked on the show that were just doing like little behind the scenes or this here and there, of what it was like to work on the show. And it got me thinking like at where we are right now, like in the culture, like I kind of feel like things are very divided. And when you look back at Attack of the Show, which is very recent, right? I mean, it's not that long ago that the show existed. It ran from 2005 to 2013. And whenever sort of something major happened in the world of tech or video games or pop culture, it was discussed on Attack of the Show. And I don't think that there's any sort of central place where people talk about those things anymore. I feel like Attack of the Show inspired a lot of people to start their own YouTube channels and talk about their own specific areas of interest. But there's not a central place where that conversation is had. And I think that Kevin really represented that in terms of his segment called The Loop, where they would talk about that or the news. And it was kind of like, let's all get together and laugh about these crazy things on the internet and also have like serious discussions about video games and tech and all that. And I feel like that's been lost. And as I've seen the culture become more divided, it's just looking back at a recent time in our history is like, wow, we were way more together on a lot of these issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point that back in, say it's 2006 or whatever, you'll find out everything you need to know by watching G4 or watching Attack of the Show. And then now you have 7,000 personal blogs and 150 people on Twitter, all with check marks, comment. I mean, it's just...
And everybody's got a podcast now.
Right, including us.
Everybody, yeah.
And
that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that media has been democratized, but there isn't a central place where we have a conversation. And I think that's I think that's left people, with all these different choices. And I think that's contributed to the difficulties we have communicating. Because I truly believe, not to get too heady, I don't want to get too serious, but I don't think that we're going to solve any of the world's problems until we learn first how to communicate to one another.
Well, we used to know how to do that, but then Twitter and Facebook came along and we forgot.
Oh, my God, you're exactly right. I do believe that social media has contributed to the erosion of our ability to talk to each other and our ability even like okay, I'm going to say something very controversial right now, and I hope this doesn't upset anybody, so
okay.
Trigger warning in place. I like The Last Jedi. I have a lot of little nitpicks about that movie, like I would any Star Wars movie. But it's the first Star Wars movie I really had liked in years. You know, I thought the prequels were a bit of a disappointment. I was not really high on Force Awakens. I thought it was a weak entry. But Last Jedi really shook things up and, you know, defied expectations and went in directions I didn't see coming. And I thought I really enjoyed it. So, but come to see that there are a ton of people out there that don't like The Last Jedi, hate Disney Star Wars. I think if there's one thing that we'll look back on this sequel trilogy of is that it was a huge mistake in that first movie to not have a reunion of Luke, Han, and Leia. What a colossal mistake! See, now we're talking about nerd stuff. It's like
well, yeah, you can have a good discussion about it because I don't like the Disney movies at all. Now, but as a caveat to that, I loved Rogue One. I thought it was a great tale. I thought it was, you know, nonstop from beginning to end. And I also, you know, liked Solo, and a lot of people did not like that, but I thought it was enjoyable.
Right. Well, I think that this is the whole thing, is that, like, you're liking things that I don't like doesn't mean that we can't have a discussion. You know what I mean? Like,
let's fight about it.
It's like, yeah, I mean, we might as well fight about chocolate versus vanilla.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, like, your taste is your taste, and whatever ice cream you like or Star Wars movies, that's fine. But it's really become it's become divided. So part of the sort of, you know, themes that will be throughout this documentary are not just about a nostalgic look back at the show, because I think a nostalgic look back at the show is I wouldn't make this documentary if that was the only thing that I'm going to be doing. It's really more a look back at an era in time when these technological tools and software like really amped up. I mean, the first iPhone came out in 2008 or 2009, right? So 3 years after I started on Attack of the Show, the first iPhone came out, right? Like, so these tools were new and we were just learning how to use them. And I think that now it's become, you know, it's become such a ubiquitous part of our lives that we have these tools, and I feel like technology has solved a lot of problems. It's also created a whole host of new ones that we didn't expect. And so while this film will be a nostalgic look at the show, it's also a look at this era in technology and how things kind of rose up as a way to contrast to where we are today. So part of that, I mean, another thing I'll be doing with this documentary is actually interviewing everybody who had anything to do with the show via a podcast. So I've never heard of a documentary doing this and I've been in like 30 different documentaries. There's a couple on Amazon. I was in The People versus George Lucas. I'm in a documentary about the Flash Gordon movie. I'm in one called Doomed, the untold story of the Fantastic Four, of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie. Yeah. So look for those. Look for me in there. I'm in it for like a minute. But what's cool is the doc filmmaker will come in. We talk for like 30 minutes or an hour, and then they use me in the doc for 2 minutes, which is perfectly fine. I think that's what you're supposed to do. But we end up having a really great conversation. I thought, wouldn't it be nice to like share with the audience that's contributing to this documentary, share all of the interviews. So it's this fascinating conversation. And we may not even, some of the people we interview may not end up in the documentary at all. But at least you'll get to hear the voices of, you know, the writers from the show, every producer, you know, the people who did like prop effects and stuff. Because the editors, I was just talking to an editor from the show the other day who was telling me these crazy stories about the show, and like how once there was like a bomb scare and it was actually his fault and it was an accident. And, I mean, all these things will come out. That's crazy. So you can follow along and listen to the unedited interviews on the podcast for the show. And then you'll watch the final documentary and maybe be disappointed about the choices I made. But
well, you can,
I really do want to. What's that? Sorry?
I was just gonna say that if people want to check out the trailer and find out more about the Kickstarter, they can go to attackofthedoc.com. I watched the trailer, and you know, just to get back to what you're saying, everybody recording this and recording that, it looks like there's a treasure trove of things that you can share in the documentary.